our futures conversations again. This is the third today. We had two yesterday, and we will have two more tomorrow. This is organized by the Millennium Project within the UNESCO High-Level Futures. I had the streaming also checking, so it is online, it is going well. So anyway, this is part of the UNESCO Futures Literacy Summit. The topic for this session is Futures Thinking for a Global Futures Intelligent System that we call GFIS within the Millennium Project. And we have today with us Jerome Glenn. He's the co-founder of the Millennium Project in 1996 with Ted Gordon, who developed the famous Delphi method and many other technologies. And Jerome Glenn is also the CEO of the Millennium Project and the lead author with Elizabeth Floresco and the Millennium Project team of the State of the Future reports for the past 20 years, and obviously the coming one next year. He has also published a lot of research, articles, and reports, like the recent one on the post-COVID scenarios for the American Red Cross. And he also published a couple of years ago, the work and technology scenarios for the year 2050. He has over 40 years experience working on a foresight with governments, international organizations, private companies, industry, basically in science and technology policy, environmental security, economics, education, defense, space futures, research methodologies, international telecommunications, and decision support systems. So, Jerome Glenn, welcome.
Thank you, Jose. What I'm going to do here is share my screen. See how this all works out okay. Can you see the first slide there?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, let me see if we can get this going up. All righty. I want to talk about three things, and environmental scanning, collective intelligence, and an application of that, the Global Futures Intelligence System. Environmental scanning is sort of like the way I explain it, that I would suggest you do it yourself when you talk to other people. Everybody knows, you know, hundreds of years ago when sailing ships were going into unknown territories, sort of like we're going into some unknown futures ourselves in the world. But when sailing ships were going into an unknown territory, the captain would say, hey, somebody's got to go up the mast, get on top, and look around and see where are the rocks and where are the safe passages. That's environmental scanning, you know, and you're looking at what's changing, what's not changing, what's permanent, what's new. That's the basic building block of all of environmental and future, all futures work. And all futurists do environmental scanning in one way or another. It's the basis of all of our work. It has different names, it changes, because the original term back in the 60s and 50s was environmental scanning. You're scanning the environment. But then later, some people say, wait a minute, people get confused. I think that you're looking at just environmental things, not technological things or political things. So then some people say, okay, we'll call it a futures scanning systems. Then some other people say, well, they're really early warning systems. So or horizon scanning systems. And then that sometimes people say, well, it's over the horizon scanning systems. And then futures intelligence systems. And increasingly, there'll be collective intelligence systems because we involve more and more people in the process. So environmental scanning becomes a more participatory activity, which I noticed the European Union a couple of years ago put out a big call for getting that. Now, this is what a generic, sort of a generic model. This is we did this one specifically for the Prime Minister's office of Kuwait. But the idea here is that you have, think of these as the eyeballs on the top 5 or so. Yeah, the eyeballs of the system looking around. One area are press releases. Press releases are a really good source. Why? Because when you do a press release yourself, you've compressed a lot of information about something you think is significant enough for the press to pay attention to, and you're making it clear and to the point and sources and so forth. So you should know the best press releases, sources for what you're interested in the future. Well, if you're an organization looking at the future of technology, what are the best press releases, sources in the world on technology? What are they? You should know that. The same with RSS feeds. RSS is really short syndication, sometimes really simple syndication. People argue about what it was first called, but anyway, that's that little orange thing in the upper right-hand corner of some websites. If you see that, you click that on, and then every time that website updates something, boom, you get it. So it's a way of monitoring those sites you think are the most important for you. And of course, newsletters and journals. But you should know the best sources for your area. And you're not sure, give that as an assignment to your staff. They should know this. The second one are Google alerts and different websites that so you should know that, like if, for example, you can put in keywords and in Google alerts, and then it'll search the internet every 24 hours and send to you what are those key items that's relevant to you. And if they're giving you information that's just not that useful, then you change the keywords. You can keep changing the keywords, keep changing them, and you can add other ones. So that's what should be an ongoing process to make your scanning more intelligent, more useful to you. And then, of course, there's going to conferences and seminars. We had a little management technique with Kuwait, which I want to share with you. When an employee once said, I want to go to some conference, like let's say this one, if it was in person or some other conference in the world, they were supposed to check in with the early warning system staff and say, okay, here's this conference I'm going to go to. Here are the people speaking. What in the system should we know about for the Kuwait Oil Company? So they get a little assignments. Then when they go, and they can't get their permission until they do that. Then when they come back, they're supposed to give the answers to those questions. And then they get paid for their expenses. So the idea was you didn't get paid for your expenses on the trip until you turn in your report to the early warning system. Now, they changed governments and administration, so it's probably not being enforced today, but in any case. Then another one you should know is a key, whoops, I went back too fast. Let's see if I can go back. Let's see, photo. Yeah, okay. If you take a look at the fifth one there on the right-hand side, that says key persons tracking. You should know who are the leaders in your field. And many of you do, but if you're in a new industry or a new scanning issue, you should immediately know who knows the most, who guesses more accurately more often than the others. Who are those key people? And then how do you track them? They have a newsletter? Do they go to a conference once a year? Will they let you call them on the phone once a month or whatever? But you have to have some method to keep track of the key people, to keep track of what you're keeping track of. Okay, so all of these five sources come into a scanning system, and then you analyze what's the pattern of all of that information. Now, when you analyze it, you'll probably run into situations where you say, I have no idea what this really means. So you check with other staff or expert groups. You can do some Delphis on it, and then when you've distilled it more, then it goes into your early warning system or your collective intelligence system, and then into reports for the Prime Minister's office or whomever you're doing this for. But then over to the left, this real red line, this is really important. And this is where systems break down. If you're just receiving information and receiving information and receiving information and don't respond, that's habituation. That makes you dumb. That's information overload. What you have to do is the staff should go back to the Prime Minister's office or whoever as far as says, hey, we want feedback. What was useful? What was useless? And then with that feedback, you can have some new requirements and you can change what you're doing up here. Just like your brain changes what it's looking at all the time and responds to feedback. So should the brain of an organization like this. This is, I can't stress this enough. Responding to feedback is what makes the intelligence, is not getting the feedback. Getting the feedback alone makes you dumb. Information overload. Okay, here's an example of a scanning item. We did for 10 years, every month, for 10 years. It's a long time. A lot on environmental scanning for the US military, which is also, by the way, shared with all the other military. So we were doing it for the world, really. So you say, what is the key item? Very precise. What are the implications? What do you do about it? So in other words, like here's the intelligence, and here's the information, and what she should do with it, and then the sources to prove it. So we cranked out, I don't know, 20, 30 of these things every month for 10 years. It was quite a process. Those things are still, by the way, available on the Department of Homeland Security now in the U.S. government for anybody. For those who want to go into more detail on this to create your own systems or to improve the systems you've got, if you go to the Futures Research Methodology 3.0, you can get access to it on our website. And it has 37 different methods, internationally peer-reviewed. And they all follow the same sort of logic, you know, what's the history of it? What is it? How do you do it? Building the valence base and use with other methods and strengths and weaknesses. Now, so this is a whole chapter on environmental scanning there if you want to take a look at that in more detail. Now, collective intelligence is increasing a new buzzword. A lot of people define it in different ways. I don't consider collective intelligence just averaging what people say. I think that's perfectly good. It's a good thing. We do this with Delphi studies, et cetera, et cetera. But to me, collective intelligence is an emergent property. We may have systems to cause this emergent, but just like your mind has all this information coming in and emerges your intelligence, emerges your mind. This is the collective intelligence of all your neurons and all that information. This is a collective intelligence of expert groups, public opinion, and other sources, such that each of these three elements can change each other. If we have a new insight in software, that may change who our experts are. The experts might tell us what sort of databases should be changed. That if every element should be able to be changed in a collective intelligence system, just like the plasticity of your brain, your plasticity can rewire all the time, continually rewiring all the time, which makes you more intelligent, right? Same thing with a collective intelligence system. So it produces that interaction, the synergies among those things, produces collective intelligence. So a knowledge management system doesn't necessarily have all the different people making comments on things, and you're managing the knowledge of your system, you're putting it together as a whole. That's a good idea, but then you can take the next step, move the knowledge management system into a collective intelligence system. So one of the objectives of the Kuwait Oil Company, the previous slide that I showed you, was so that there was a way for everybody in the company, including drivers, including janitors, including the board of directors, including everybody, there had to be some way for the insights of the whole company to be integrated into a coherent and an organized way so that the whole company gets intelligent together, is the idea. Okay, so for the academics in the group, here's the academic definition that I am told by somebody in Latvia or somewhere, maybe Estonia or maybe Estonia. Anyway, somebody just finishing up a doctor's degree on collective intelligence. And she contacted me and said that your definition is the most widely used around the world. And simply because it's in Wikipedia, probably. But here's the definition. Collective intelligence emerges. Remember, it's not a thing itself. That's a report. That's a document. But it emerges from the integration and synergies among data, information, and knowledge, hardware and software, experts and others with insight, that continually learns from feedback to produce just-in-time knowledge for better decisions than these elements acting alone. Just-in-time is an important concept here, and we're going to be running more and more into this. Like increasingly, as manufacturers make new things, they are putting on YouTube a augmented reality access to how to repair their thing. So you may not, so instead of like learning everything about repair the thing, you'll learn about it as you need to at that moment. Because the world is exploding with so much knowledge, things become much more complex. It's hard to know everything, and it keeps changing. So you're obsolete within a short period of time. So we have to have just-in-time knowledge systems, so that when you need it is when you get the information. And of course, Google has been the master of helping us do that. As a matter of fact, I think that Google has made the phrase, "I don't know," obsolete. It simply means you haven't Googled it yet. It's an extraordinary statement when you think about it, but we have to get to a point of just-in-time knowledge when you need it, at the time you need it, and the format you need it. Okay, so that's the idea of collective intelligence. This is a little chart a lot of people have seen from time to time. I just want to highlight this. The purpose of these systems and collective intelligence is to get to wisdom. It's not just simply to have a whole lot of data. All the rest of these serve wisdom. That's the objective of the game. So data, just to oversimplify, I gave some very oversimplified definitions. So data is a raw input and that which you can count. The pattern of that's the information. But then understanding that information is knowledge. What does it mean? That's the knowledge. How do you act? How does that help you act? The action part, that's intelligence. So when people say actionable intelligence, I know the intelligence community loves to say actionable intelligence. To me, that's redundant. Knowledge is one thing, intelligence is another thing. Intelligence is what do you do? But wisdom is when and how you act with intelligence. Three organizations can have the same intelligence, but one can use it more wisely than another. What does that mean? How they use it. And that's the objective of what we want to help the world move toward is wisdom. Okay, now, so one of our early attempts here that you can see later on, I don't want to mess up with trying to do these links on live at the moment, but hopefully you'll be able to get the PowerPoint here and you can see the 2-minute video that sort of gives you a graphic idea of how this thing works. And then another more in detailed video, 5 minutes or so, for how you use the system for the 15 global challenges. The 15 global challenges is a way of structuring and a framework for what you're scanning about. You have to, when you put it together, a scanning system, you have to know what you're scanning for. What are the primary challenges for your organization or for your country? We say that these are the 15 primary challenges for the world. So you should have your own as well as a framework for doing it. Now, this is what the front end looks like. You can go to this website without subscribing, and you don't even have to log in because you can go to the 15 global challenges and click on any of those, and you can get the short overviews. Any executive summary or executive overviews we make available free to everybody. The details you subscribe to. But this is what it looks to. The themp.org is the address. Because we wrote this from scratch, I mean, we wrote this software from scratch, not putting onto different templates, but the whole thing. It's a very unique system, the way it works. I won't go into the detail, you can play with that later on. But Chrome has just updated its requirements. So we have to match those requirements. So right now, if you go there on Chrome, it may say, it's unsafe. This site is safe, don't worry about it. It's just that Chrome changed some requirements. So you can go into advanced and then click, you can go in on safe and you can get in there and take a look at these things. I think Opera is no problem. You can get into it with Opera. You can get into it also with Safari. So there's a variety of ways to get into it, but we're just having some Chrome issues at the moment. Okay, now this is what the menu looks like for a given challenge. Here, this one, we're just starting with challenge number 1, but each challenge has the news input. Remember, that's the stuff that you're pulling in for the mind. And it has a scanning. That's the permanent parts. Just like in a newspaper, you read a newspaper, there's certain parts you rip out, you keep. So the scanning is a part that you keep. We show all the edits, like Wikipedia, so you can see the evolution of anything that we've done. The digest, if you want to click that, that gives you the newest things in each of the menu options. Report is sort of to keep the professors here happy. This is the short overview that everybody can get, but then the long overview of detailed stuff. Each one of these challenges is probably about anywhere from 200 to 400 pages. So it's a large system of 15 challenges. And then situation. Situation is what is the situation, what ought to be the situation, where there's difference of opinion, you put them next to each other. And what do we do about that? And if there's difference of opinion, you show those as well. So what is, what ought, and how do you address the gap between what is and ought? That's a way of organizing knowledge that I'm pushing, and I think it's important because we have so much knowledge and information today. You got to ask yourself the question, what's important to know? I can't know everything. I'm trying to, but I just can't do it. So I'm saying, what are the most important things? If you say you know the situation, what is it that you should really know? And what do you want to know it for? Well, to get to some objective. Okay, what is that? And then what's the gap between the two? How do you address that? That's another way of organizing a subject matter in universities and high schools and so forth. Right now, we organize it like the report. What's the general situation and different elements and so forth. They give you the exam and then we applaud and you leave the university. Okay. So I mentioned before the scanning chart, but there's also public comments. One of the unique things of our system is that every piece of information, whether it's something about a method or a previous futures research or a news item, doesn't matter, whatever it is, every piece of information in the bottom right-hand corner has a little icon you can click on and make a comment so you can feed back. So it slowly builds a collective intelligence system. People aren't quite used to that. They're used to going to databases and pulling stuff out. And that's what most people do with our system. They read stuff, they pull stuff out. But we'd also like them to click on the comments sometimes and say, hey, that was cool, that was not cool. Here's why. And here's a web link, so that we slowly learn together. We also put in there the best resources for each of them, what websites, what books, papers, videos, and discussion groups we originally put in here. And then my guy writing the code decided to take it out, and I got it, and it's still in the system. We can reconnect it. What it is, it's an evolution of Delphi. As you know, the first Delphi gives a questionnaire, the early question that Ted Gordon was involved in and others at the RAND Corporation. The original Delphi, you would have your questions, get your responses, and then you would take the responses, then make a second questionnaire to force people to respond to other people's ideas. Because sometimes when you have some generals and admirals, they don't necessarily want to sit in the same room at the same time. They don't want to deal with each other, or somebody's a lower rank. They don't want to contradict the senior officer. So it's anonymous, but it forces you to respond to the answers on round one. So that forms round two. Then round two collects all that information and feedback and makes a round three. And you do some, even going up to 5, but 2 to 3 rounds is sort of usual. That's the original approach to Delphi. So it's basically a way to have an organized conversation among different minds so that ideas are persuasive rather than personalities or rank. All right, then, which is still the best way to go. But if you're in a hurry, doing it the old way is a problem, because the original Delphi can take you 6 months or more. But if you have to have an answer on the president's desk in 48 hours, you can't use a Delphi unless you use what we call a real-time Delphi. Real-time Delphi is you can vote often and early. The idea is you put out the questions, but as soon as you hit your turn key, anybody in the system can see what you wrote. They won't know your name, but they can get the feedback. And you can come back at any time, maybe 6 hours later or 5 hours later, because let's say this is going to be for 48 hours, okay? So you can come back in and you see that somebody misunderstood what you said. So you can go back into what you said and rewrite it so it's more clear, so that you can continue to edit and improve what you say over the period of time. You can't do that in regular Delphi, but in the real-time Delphi, you can do this. So then you can say to people, at the end of 48 hours, we print whatever's there. That's what goes on the executive's desk. That's very useful for speeding things up. Now, we sometimes use the real-time Delphi in several rounds as well, as we did with the work technology. We did, I think, 9 real-time Delphis. But what I want to get to today is the third kind of Delphi, which we haven't implemented yet. So you're getting a preview of the future here. When you do a questionnaire or a Delphi or anything like that, you usually have demographic questions, right? Now, some questions you might want to have different demographics than other questions, but that's not the way it works. You have to have the same demographics when a person comes in for all the questions, regardless of what the question is. Secondly, you sometimes get all the information you need at a certain period of time. Nothing new. No, if another 1,000 people came in, there's no more content. There's no more this new. There's no more, the averages between the numbers doesn't change. There's a point where that happens, and you're never quite sure where that point is. So to address these two issues, what we do is have it under each challenge, whereas as comment or discussion group, it'll say in the future RTD, real-time Delphi. You click that on, and you can see what questions have been put on by different people. So different people ask different questions and have different demographics. And when enough information has come in under that question, the person who created that then can say, okay, we're done. They can take the responses and then put it into the situation option so that you're improving the situation with the insights or the forecast, or whatever it happens to be. So this way, different people can create the Delphi. They can end at different times, and they can be started at different times. So let's say that you're reading something or you're doing something online, and all of a sudden says, oh boy, we really don't know about X. Well, let me go over to that challenge. I can put in that real-time Delphi, boom, question, and put in the different demographics that I want to have. And so that anybody in the system, subscribers, anybody in the system can then pose a real-time Delphi question when they're ready to pose it. So that's a third version of Delphi, which we haven't re-implemented, but it's in the system. We just got to connect it up. Okay, now this is what I mentioned to you before a little bit about the option under each challenge. There's about 11 options for each challenge. Situation. So like if you say you know sustainable development and climate change, what is it that you should know? Well, you should know the atmospheric parts per million. You should know the greenhouse gas emissions. You should know the country emission pledges. You should know ocean acidity. You should know fossil fuel subsidies. You should know Arctic ice levels. You should know global temperature. You should know the current forecast. We say that's what you should know. And if you don't know that, you don't know the situation. Now, someone may come along and say, no, wait a minute. You don't have anything in here about technological intervention. So we might want to add a new item under current technological innovation. And that may go over to challenge 14 on science and technology. We're not sure, but that's the idea is everything, remember before in collective intelligence, everything can be changed. So under current situation, all those items can be changed, can be modified, and can be added and subtracted. Same thing under desired situation and the policies to address the gap. Okay, now a few words about the Millennium Project for those that don't know. It was an idea to create a global think tank for a global future. How do we put it all together? Now that's a reasonable dream that almost any futurist has been interested in, and we've brought it along a long way. It was originally put together in a 3-year feasibility study after a 1-year pre-feasibility study. I was the liaison between the United Nations University in Tokyo and the United States. So we created it underneath the UN University to begin with, but they said, well, have a little secretariat office at the American Council for UN University and answer the question, somebody must be doing this already. In other words, the idea of a global futures think tank is pretty obvious. So in 1991, I guess, when we were talking about that, the first paper was 1988, written by Ted Gordon on this, but at that time it was the idea of doing a big global study. And I'm saying I don't want to do another global study per se. I want a global system to do global studies. Okay, so that's how we got going. And UN University says, but somebody's probably working on it, maybe the World Economic Forum or somebody's working on this. So we had to show the state of the art. And then that led to a 3-year feasibility study. And the idea was to give a gift from the previous millennium to the next millennium. And the gift would be a way for people to think together about the future in some coherent way. Okay, so during the feasibility study, we talked to many different futurists around the world, did some Delphis and some studies, but it was put together initially by UN organizations, UNDP, and UNESCO. As a matter of fact, UNESCO funded our feasibility final report. And governments were involved. First government stuff was actually the Russian government and Ford Motor Company. Two quite different systems there. Then NGOs and foundations, corporations, and universities. And the idea is to become a a trans institution. Now, a trans institution does not have legal personhood, as we say in law. It's an idea. We operate like a trans institution a little bit, but it doesn't fully exist yet. The idea is that all institutional categories have their strengths and weaknesses. So why not just take the strengths out of each of those institutions, and instead of recruiting people, be attractive and attract people into it? Because the Millennium Project is too complex to manage in the normal way. So we try to attract people, because the people who say, I want in, you don't have to manage them as much as those that you recruit. You recruit, you got to keep them. You manage them, you got to tell them what to do. It's a lot of work. So the key point here is it's an attracting system. So you could have a trans institution for AIDS, you could have a trans institution for education. So like, who are the people in government that want to really improve education? Who are the people in corporations that really want to improve education, etc.? So you're pulling together out of all these institutional categories. Now, one of the advantages of a trans institution is that you can act through the different categories. You know, there's like when we did the future of work and technology, we had suggestions for business, but there's people in business in the Millennium Project. And the same thing for academics. Same thing for government. So it also means that when we send out a request to our node chairs around the world, we would like them to say, well, who knows the most in government, who knows the most in business, so that they're picking brains from the different categories. So one, you're pulling information from all these categories, but not a majority of any one, because the future is not just government, it's not just corporations, it's not just NGOs, it's all of us together. So you're pulling from all of these sort of things. And then you're also sending back through those pieces of interest, all those categories as well. So like the nodes, the local nodes around the world are like the global local. They connect local people in their country with the global situation. The global situation gets fed by the local, so that you're doing this global local together. So that's the idea of it. It also has the advantage that when we do work, it has to make sense to the bottom line because business is there. It has to make sense politically because government is there. It has to make sense internationally because the UN and others around the world are there. It has to make sense to values because the NGOs are there. It has to make sense to knowledge. It has to be knowledgeable because the universities are there. They're going to nitpick you if you're not right. Okay, so that's the idea. Now you can create your own trans institution. Your think tank or your organization. You can have a trans institution within your organization, just like you have entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. They create a business within a business. You could create a trans institution within your institution as an experimental thing to see how it works out. Okay, so we have these nodes around the world. This is sort of a quick picture of where they are. They're all geographic except for two. One is cyberspace, and the other is arts and media. And we may be doing some others as we go along. But this is sort of the system, the scanning system, if you will, that helps build our collective intelligence for the project. So we try to scan the future, you know, up in our little crow's nest, the first slide I showed you before, on what's the story with energy and peace and conflict, rich and poor, and all that sort of stuff on an ongoing basis. So then we can report back down to the cabinet. Hello, people. This is what we see is going on. These are the 15 global challenges. That was discussed yesterday. You can see the videotape on that, so I won't go through that. But this is like the human body. We don't know everything about the human body, but we can understand it, and it's changed by understanding the basic system, the respiratory system, the skeletal system, the endocrine system. So we understand, you know, high school science, we understand basically how the body functions. Well, we got to understand that on a global basis as well. So we're saying that these are sort of like the system, the elements, and a system in the sense that if you change the water situation, you're going to change the war and peace situation. You change the war and peace situation, you're going to change the rich-poor gaps. You know, it's a system. So it's a way of understanding the world as a whole. And then we update and try to improve the insights ongoing for the 25 years or so, as Jose mentioned in the introduction. You can look at this later on. I don't expect you to read it right now. These are some of the studies that we've done around the world. I just put this up so you get an idea of the breadth and depth that we bring. One of the things we wanted to contribute to Futures research is what we call accumulative research, like your brain. When it gets a new piece of information, it doesn't throw out the old. It sees what's the relationship. So that we try to build on all of our studies. We try to build how does that one inform key insights into the next, so that you're getting smarter and smarter and smarter. So I think the most recent study of the work technology is, in a sense, is drawing a little bit on a lot of these learnings as we go along. These are the sponsors. As I mentioned, one of the idea of a trans institution is that your money should come from all these institutional categories, but not a majority of any one. So that you're no more academically oriented than you are business oriented, or you're no longer government oriented than you are UN oriented or NGO. So as you can see here, it's a broad, very broad, diverse group from the US Army to UNESCO. It's about as diverse as I can think of, actually, or in NATO. Anyway, you can't read this easily online very easily, but you can get the PowerPoint later on if you're interested. The most recent State of the Future is 19.1. You can get that from our website. And then the special study, work technology one, we think that the 3 scenarios in there are the most detailed, rich scenarios that have been written so far. Each one of the scenarios is about 10 pages. They're rich. And they're scenarios in the sense that they're a story that connects the present to the future with cause and effect links and decisions that are plausible. Not simply describing an endpoint future. A lot of times when people do scenarios, they're really saying, like they'll say, in this scenario, this is what the world looks like. Well, that's a description of a future situation. That's true, better than nothing. But the real value is the connecting between the present and the future, because then you'll find out as you write, I have no idea what happens next. And that's one of the values, the original reason for inventing scenarios that people have forgotten, is to find out what you didn't know that you really should stop and figure out, because that question is important. When anybody writes a story, where it's a fiction story, you write along and say, I have no idea what happens next. That's where you start to learn. And if you skip that step and just go to the end point describing it, you lose that value of scenarios. Anyway, these things are rich, detailed. There are 3 of them, so that's 30 pages. And then there's about 90 some odd actions that came out of workshops that were done around the world. And then each of the actions were assessed by a different Delphi panel, by the way. It was really a rich report. This is, for people who really want to get their teeth into what to do about all this, is some rich detail, much more detail than most reports. Okay, and then we also make available the Futures Research Methodology for those that are doing futures methods and so forth. This is a very useful tool. As I mentioned, there's the chapters on environmental scanning, so that's just one of 37 different methods in here. Every futurist that does some kind of methods really should have this as a reference for them. So that's the main points that I wanted to make, and I'm happy to discuss this at this point. Stop sharing here at some point. Let's see if I can do that. Let's see.
Wonderful, Jerry. We have many people connected with us here. So if Mara, if you allowed people to unmute themselves when they want to ask a question, then we can begin. We still have at least 20 minutes for some interaction here with Jerome Glenn. So let's do that. Who wants to be the first to unmute yourself?
Oh, I see a whole bunch of things in the chat. Oh, they're mostly references. That's good.
Yeah,
by the way,
I put some references while you were speaking. You can unmute yourself by yourself, so just jump in and talk.
Yep.
I just wondering, my name is Carl Fredriksson from Iceland. I was just wondering, we have been doing scenario programs in Iceland in different sectors, in different fields and so forth. And a part of that is doing some scanning work, of course, going through the process and so forth. We do our reports and the problem which we often face are how to get people involved to draw on some actions. Sometimes they say, okay, that's a fine report and the report is there. Of course, we would like to go further as you did in the tech work reports, fantastic document, and but we have sometimes. Well, that's a tricky problem which we are facing, and do you have any bright ideas how to tackle that?
Well, I have ideas. I don't know how bright they are. One is try to involve. This is very important, been very difficult, but try to involve the people who would take the decisions in the study while the study is going on. There's a lot of ways to do this. One is you can give them sort of like a 1/3 into the study, or even before the study begins. Here's how we're going to do it. And they might say, well, what about this and this? So you've included their thinking early on. And then maybe like halfway through, here's where we are so far. And I say, oh, what about this? And then so when you get to the end, they know why you're at the end and how you're there. So that's one part of the answer, is to include decision makers in your study as much as possible. And don't be worried if they like change your whole approach, because after all, the purpose is to make a difference. And so it's not to write a report. Okay, so that's one. There's also, we did a study on, it's on the website, something like 27 steps or 26 steps to connect futures research with strategy. By the way, the relationship that I would make, it's useful to talk to decision makers about this, is to say, futures research is like the food, and the actions and strategy, that's the muscle. If you don't feed the muscle, it's not going to be very useful. If you just have muscle and no food, it's a relationship. So strategy and futures research are two different things. One's input, and the other is like the action, right? So helping that distinction, say, oh, now I understand why you're doing what you're doing, so that the actions will be more intelligent than otherwise. Okay, so that there's a list of those things, and you can get it online at some point. Okay, the other is you can have a session either halfway through or toward the end when you do your briefing to engage them in discussion of action, and then have that as a postscript to the report. Say, here's the report. We had this briefing, and out of that, here are the key actions that came out, because then they own the actions, because they were part of the discussion that got there. So those are a couple of suggestions for this.
Great points. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Jerry.
Yeah.
Just quickly, now that the COVID scenarios have been published, and now that the vaccinations have begun, at least in the United Kingdom, and certainly very soon in many European countries like in Spain, and I hope in the USA as well soon, how do you see this evolving? Which scenario are we closer to?
You see, that's it's not fair for me to answer, because I wrote scenario 1 on American Doors. So I think that's the most logical one. But it's intended to be the middle. We did best, worst, and middle. The good news, in the first scenario, American Doors, it assumed, these were obviously finished a couple of months ago. It assumes that Biden would win. There's a new administration. It also assumed that there was a whole mess of vaccines, and they would average together around 55% or so efficacious. Now, we're now seeing, which would mean in the scenario, we'd have to get to about 70% vaccination rate to get to herd immunity. The good news is that we got the 95% now. Now, yes, there's problems with refrigeration. Yes, there's problems with shedding. With 2 shots. Yes, there's a lot of problems with it. But nevertheless, if we get enough of that out there, then the percent that you need to get it is under 50% to get to herd immunity, which means that herd immunity may happen a little faster than we thought. Now, a little faster, we were saying, is still not that fast, because you got the whole world. Because as you know, there's mutations going on and major impacts in Brazil at the moment. Also, you got the stuff in Europe with the mink, the animal that has caused a mutation. humans gave it to the animals can now give it back, and it comes mutated, which means that the vaccination may not be as effective if the virus has mutated enough. Right now, it's had a lot of mutations, but they're small mutations that don't really matter. But if it mutates enough going through Latin America, Africa, and Asia, and through other different animals and coming back, then going back and forth between the North and the South, because the mutations occur, the more the interaction, more the transfer between different hosts, which means we may hit a situation 6 months down the road that enough of the virus mutation may make those things obsolete. So right now, I'm hoping the 95% holds. But if these other things come into play, which I say they do actually in scenario 2, we assume that there'll be some mutations coming up next year. But again, the point isn't to predict the future in these scenarios. The point is to alert people to say, hey, you got to make sure you have enough medical glass for syringes, for vials. And if you don't, you can't meet your goals. So as you're writing the scenarios, you say, for example, as we wrote them, it was clear there's not enough people to do contact tracing in the United States. It didn't add up. So you have to bring in Peace Corps volunteers, which, by the way, an implication already of the scenarios, Peace Corps actually did. Peace Corps now has volunteers going across, because I called up the Peace Corps and says, by the way, what's possible on this? Because when you write a scenario, it's got to be plausible. So you had to stop, call people on the phone. And so I put that in there. So Peace Corps now is involved in that. Also, military, they have done some filling, and National Guards have done some filling, and other volunteers. But the weak point right now, Jose, in my judgment, is the app. People in the United States are not downloading the app. If you don't have enough people to download, there's two things. You have to have enough people to download the app, and you have to have enough people to tell the truth. I'm sick. Because if you don't say I'm sick or I've got it, then the contact tracing, the local connection between the apps doesn't work. So this is the great failing at the moment in the United States. So in doing these scenarios, we find out things like this along the way by writing them. So I would say scenario 2 is most likely. But there's elements in all three that are likely. The economic cascading is still in play. And we had an impact from the beginning, but now the situation of the virus is worse than at the beginning. So that means to me, the economic impact will be more than what we saw in the last 6 months. And the last 6 months was, world recession and maybe going into depression. So we got some major things coming up, the problems of that. And that was well discussed by scenario 2 by Ted Gordon. But then how national planning can pull in comes in and was discussed well in scenario 3. So anybody having to do this are going to do it their own. Read all three and pull out what you want from it. But the idea is to make us more intelligent, to anticipate things that we might not have anticipated. And that the scenarios are in play to do right now.
Jerry,
Okay.
I have a question for you.
Yes. Yep.
So this morning we talked with Elizabeth of research methodology and prospective foresight, and I asked this question. In fact, have you already used global future intelligence system as a weak signal monitoring tool? But in fact, I think that it's another way of thinking this tool, because we don't. If we have a very important analysis of the content of this tool, I think that maybe we will be able to observe that this tool can be, in fact, a monitoring tool for weak signal. Maybe but I'm not sure of that. But the question, have you already observed some weak signal coming back from this tool?
Sure. I mean, as you know, we were talking about the civilization coming to a grinding halt because of a pandemic. Well, we didn't say when, but the weak signal was there that that's inevitable. It's going to happen, and boom, here we are. We haven't listed as a element weak signals. It's an interesting thought. Maybe we should. But the user. The idea the user is supposed to do it, because this is like a utility, like electricity. How you use electricity is your business. Another person uses electricity for something else. So it's all right. But so if you read through the news, one of the things we have interns doing and others is they read through the news items and say, that's important. So we copy that into the scanning. So in a sense, that's the beginning of a weak signal analysis of what we pull in from the news. Because a weak signal has got to be a signal from something. So one of the ways we get the thing is by news around the world to a large degree. So taking from that into the scanning, then you look at the pattern in the scanning, you read through the scanning items, and you might say, "Ooh, you know what? Something's beginning to happen here." It's not specifically in a scanning item, but it's the pattern, it's the meta-analysis that you're seeing. So a user can do that right now. But we haven't done it for the user yet. That's a thought. It's just another step of work. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think it's very interesting.
But as a participatory system, you can have people look at it, and you can, under comments, you can say, "Look, here's a weak signal." You can do that.
No,
so we'll share the work.
Yes, yes. But I think that it's very interesting. It will be very interesting to analyze the content. It's hard work, of course.
Yes.
To know and to be able to observe if some of the information integrated in this model, in this platform, was weak signal when they're coming on the platform. And what they give information for the future. Maybe
to a large degree. If I could, what I can probably do is, remember I said one of the things to do is go through the situation, through the different 15 challenges, read right through all, and I should probably do that with in mind, were there weak signals in there ahead of time? Because I'm sure there are. I just haven't analyzed it that way. We've analyzed it more for what to do.
Yes.
But we could also analyze it for weak signals. So okay, you got me thinking. But I want you, you and your students can also maybe go look through there yourself.
Yes, of course.
And by the way, if they forget their password, they can still get the short overview. And reading that through 15 is a pretty big deal.
I begin it.
Yeah, and okay, and from that they might see some weak signals themselves. And if so, let me know. And then maybe under situation, like we have under situation, we have forecast in each of the one of the forecasts, current forecast. We might also have weak signals. Now, what bothers me is that if we start it, we might have 1 or 2 weak signals to begin with. And then people say, well, now, wait a minute, that's pretty lousy. I can tell you there's another 20 weak signals you haven't seen yet. Well, we haven't started. We're starting the construction. And anyway, but we'll think about this. And we can maybe collaborate and doing that. Also, Finland has got a nice weak signal system. So maybe we can do some collaboration with Finland on that as well. Good. All right. More homework.
There is Elias who is sharing thoughts on the chat. Maybe he wants to jump in and discuss with you. Here he is.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hi, nice to meet you. I work with Strathclyde with intuitive logic scenario, and I'm very fan of your work as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for saying. There's an interesting going on discussion about data, about text mining and AI pattern recognition, which you can do real time weak signal analysis, and just making this kind of trend also very real time, and give to the world all the decision makers, as you say, the food for thought, as you said, about making strategic responses. It's an everyday almost, something that they can, and not to read something that goes into history, so it becomes obsolete because news, and there's also the filtering goes on between those who read the news and they interpret them to the, as we say, to the situation as they perceive it. So I'm not suggesting, I'm just suggesting that to substitute the human judgment, with the AI or something, but just complement it and then be able to receive these kind of trends at a much, or augment human judgment, if you'd like.
Right.
Thanks.
Yes. Good question. A good observation. We, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, did a study on the future of science technology for the Office of Science of the Department of Energy in the United States, and we produced some scenarios. In the United States, the national labs, that make atomic bombs and things like that, the advanced science labs are called the national labs. They're run out of the Office of Science. So we included the directors of these national labs in this study, and one of them was Pacific Northwest, and they tend to get the unclassified software, I noticed, earlier than other people. It's just like military has surplus military stuff. Well, maybe there's some software stuff. Anyway, so they offered to take all of our stuff, which is still a lot at that point, and run some text mining and very fancy software on it. And they produced beautiful charts. I mean, they were gorgeous, but they told me what I already knew. Now, that's not a fair criticism because I'm writing all this sort of stuff, so I should know. But we should have paid more attention to it, and we should do that. Even though it may tell us, the analysts, what we already know, it does, as you point out, put it in a nice graphic way. But we've got to figure out how those graphic presentations lead to action, because when they did the text mining, it told us a whole lot about the knowledge, about the content. But now we have a relationship with IBM a bit, which I've got to go back to on Watson. What we can probably do is, and the trouble is, I don't know what it is now, but last year you had to reformat your material a lot for Watson to be able to use it. But I noticed that Watson, IBM Watson, did do a run on arguments pro and con. I don't know, it was climate change or something like that, and it was really brilliant. And we should do that. So now I got 2 homework assignments. I don't know how many questions I can handle, all this extra homework we got to do. But yeah, you're right. We should do that. We do have a chapter on all this by Porter down in Georgia. So maybe I can throw the ball to him and say, hey, we'll give you all the data. Can you guys run your systems on it? Or maybe we go back to the Northwest lab. But we're not being funded by the Office of Energy at this point. But yeah, you're right. We should do that. And if nothing else, it makes a really good cover for the report.
Jerry.
Yeah.
If I can, Simone. Hi.
Hey, hi.
Just to say,
wait a minute. This looks to me like the Matrix training room.
It's a Japanese gym, but my background is not.
Aha. All of a sudden, my backbone started to straighten up. I gotta be put together here now.
I like martial arts, so for this.
Yes. And after you make the comment, I want to ask you about the female training versus female treatment in the society. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
So just to say that I'm working with one of my students. He elaborated a text mining algorithm and produced 5 different topics on COVID-19. And we want to use these as a baseline for scenario building.
Aha.
So this is more or less the idea. I think the idea of Elias.
Good. So I can sort of share some homework with you.
Yes.
By the way, also, I don't know if you're aware, we're also working on a state of the pandemic index.
No, the idea is that just in few hours, you can have a lot amount of data synthesized by the topics from text analysis. And
Right.
this is, in my opinion, this could be the base, the base stuff on the table to start constructing scenarios, discuss with the expert, and so on. Some kind of let's say digital scanning. I don't know how to say, but it could be a good starting point.
Do you have this written up in English?
The script?
Yeah, well, not the script, but the concept.
No, we are. This is a student of mine is working on this algorithm. So this is just preliminary results.
Okay. So if you were to run the algorithm on something, should I send you the? We already have it. I thought you already have the COVID scenarios, right?
Yes.
Can that be used as input?
Sorry.
Can the scenarios be used as input for this analysis?
Yes, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe offline we can do some communications on that. Yeah, but that would be good. But by the way,
I think the idea is to scan the web and to use the information and to process through the algorithms in order to create scenarios. You know?
Yes, this is the idea, but I mean, Jerry maybe is telling the reverse thing, starting from the scenario and make some sort of meta-analysis with the.
Right.
Intriguing.
Yeah, but now he could put this algorithm essentially to scan news of the world?
Yes, web page, Twitter, any kind of textual data.
All right, so then how does it do the search? How does it know which websites to go to?
There are algorithms that technically is a streaming of web page or Twitters, and so you can filter the text by keyword, but through the keywords.
Excellent. Now, do some of your students, or do you know JS Node and JavaScript?
Oh, JS Node is used to create links between users.
Yeah.
And handmade algorithm called social grabber is used to streaming for the initial streaming of the data.
Good. The reason I asked that is that it would be interesting if one of the students then can take a look at the code where we have the news coming in and how that's handled. See, right now we make a decision saying that news source is good, and then we add it as a news source, and then once it's added, it's automatic. But that's a human decision at this point on which ones are good sources. But to use your students with the algorithms, that would be automating that function, which I think would be excellent addition. So it'd be interesting to see if we could put that algorithm into GFIS to make that an automatic function within GFIS.
Yes. I'm not an expert in the code because it's a Python code, but my student did it.
Okay, because they can always do the Control U to see the code at that point.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a thought. It would be another piece of homework. I was supposed to giving you guys information. Now you guys are giving me homework.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Sorry, perhaps to add on this, the same point, I'm looking for another publication I recently found of the Inter-American Development Bank. It was about COVID and was also an analysis of Twitter and Facebook opinions on different aspects of COVID. And it was done with an American corporate, I don't know, it's a corporation specialized in ITs and so on. But I will look right now just to send the link, because I guess this corporation has developed already, because there's already a report and is like an ongoing monitoring on this. So it's on Latin America, because it's from that bank, but the methodology, I guess, could be applied. And I agree that it's very interesting to complement this with the other source of information.
Excellent, thank you. Where are you located?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm in Brussels right now, but I work a lot with Latin America because I've worked there for over 10 years. So that's why I'm looking information from different parts of the world.
Excellent, thank you. Well, the EC is a subscriber to the system. Are you working with the EC? No? Okay,
No,
anyway, EC's, two different parts of the EC subscribe to it, but what institution are you with?
Yes, I've worked with the United Nations, so UNDP, in Foresight for over 10 years, but right now I'm a consultant, so it's Peace and Development Scenarios, the organization.
Right, okay.
It's for
the organization, the organization can get it. They get a lower deal as a nonprofit organization. UNDP was was a sponsor of our second year of the feasibility study.
Yes, there's a long history also in Foresight, so it's interesting to mix different approaches and methodologies and tools. Yeah,
is UNDP, what's it doing next? I remember what we helped get the African Futures UNDP project going. They were the ones that funded the first set of the methods. When we did 17 at that point was UNDP funding, and that was given to all the African ministers of planning.
Yes, it has evolved a lot, but yes, from one side, there's this Latin American network, so it was linked to PAPEP, UNDP, I don't know if you know it, so it was born in the 90s, so it's very long, but there are new entries. So for example, in Singapore, there are a specialized UNDP Foresight Center focused on public policy, so mainly for public administration, and then right now they are creating another node in New York, so more linked to the SDGs. So even inside UNDP, there are different approaches.
Right, good. All right. If you, I'll look forward to your link, and we can also, if you also send the email, we can put you into the email listserv so you can get updated on some of these things. One.
So, Concepcion, Elizabeth, do you want to join? Concepcion, you're muted.
Okay, congratulations, Jerry. I really enjoy very much your presentation and learn more about the things that I'm already managing in regard to GFIS. And I think it would be very useful if I can have also your new slides in regard to that, because I'm presenting a synthesis next Wednesday in Buenos Aires of what I have already spoken there.
Good, okay.
I can really improve part of what I have done. And well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
You are doing a great job.
Thank you. In the slides that I'll send you, I think these slides will be made to everybody within the UNESCO activity, but I'll also send you directly, but we may want to take a look at the two videos. One is 2 minutes and one is, I think, 5 or so. And that you can show to people, although your audience will be speaking in Portuguese, no, in Spanish, right?
But it is okay. Most of them, I think, speak English, so that would be great.
Yeah, because sometimes a video makes it more real to people when they see how they jump around.
And they already attended the session, so this is like a resume that will be something new, because all the speakers that have participated have been with them along the year. Will have like 20 minutes to discuss or to present something in regard to the things that we already spoke about it.
Good.
But I found new elements that will really help me a lot.
Good.
And thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you tomorrow.
Yeah.
after your speech, of course. So grateful for all of us who live in America, but I'm sorry for all those who live in Europe because it's quite late for them, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, but when this whole thing began, I had to get up at like 3 o'clock in the morning the first day to open the thing up at 9 o'clock or whatever. It was 3 a.m. for us. Anyway, or 4 a.m. I guess it was 10.
Well, congratulations, having a great group.
Thank you. Now, let's see. We're sort of going over our time. Are there any other questions there before we sign off? One-on-ones? Whoops, what's that?
Why don't you do a special invitation for tomorrow, Jerry? Because you have a speech tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow I'll be talking about something. I think was it general futures thinking or something like that tomorrow, I think?
Post-pandemic futures of work and technology.
Oh, right, the work and technology. Yeah, okay, then we get into some real meat. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about working tomorrow. At the same time as this one, and then following it will be Concepcion, and she can tell you what you're going to be covering about tomorrow. How's that?
Oh, yes, sure. I'll speak about our experience in regard to the Global Millennium Prize, and maybe we can share how it started with that idea. And after that, about futures, the World Foresight Dictionary Encyclopedia. And I will be ending with the things that we are doing now with Mexico, that we have already finished a book on the 15 global challenges and towards 2050. And we're working on it for Latin America as well. Julio Zamora Baris, which is the vice president of the World Future Society, will be speaking about what is the experience in regard of what the governments have done in regard to foresight for have a better governance or not, and what are the universities doing as well. So I think it will be a great session that we will be able to share your good experiences.
Excellent.
And congratulations to all of you.
Okay. Mara, if there's no more questions, I guess we can close out.
Yeah, I think so. Any last question? We're okay. So I think we're supposed to see each other together tomorrow. Yeah. I hope you will join us for our last 2 future conversations. Any last thought, Jerry, for closing the session? And then
have a happy future. Okay.
Let's hope so.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Elvis.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Safia.
Thank you.